Hey everybody, this is Perch. A little known book outlet that you don't hear a lot of, but you probably should, is Disney Press. And this they have an imprint called Marvel Press as part of Disney Press, but it's Disney Press. If you open a book and you look, the Marvel Press is kind of it's window dressing in the same way that Black Label is DC. It's an imprint, it's a marketing thing, but it's Disney Press. They call it Marvel Press. And Marvel Press has, or Disney Press, has had some pretty decent success in getting books into new places. One of the kind of more interesting things I think they did is they created a combination of kind of graphic novel in a little book, mysteriously the same size, the same tankobon size as what's selling in manga. And they got places like Target and Walmart to actually put the books with these kind of graphic novel characters in with their toys. And if you've been to Target lately, and I think it's slowly moving its way, Target has partnered with Disney to put a Disney store, in effect, like a pop-up store, inside of the Target. And so what that means is you go to the toy section and you see this little sub area within the toy section where they've changed the shelving around, and there's different carpet and some stuff hanging that says it's the Disney store in Target. And this entire thing basically, I mean, this is going on a lot right now as retail's consolidating. But inside of this Disney store within Target, you see a bunch of experiments, and one of them is getting books and comics. Oh, but hold on a second, not Marvel comics, but comics inside of this little section in Target. And they've done it primarily with Disney princesses, but there's stuff with Encanto and kind of more their more modern movies where they've got the toys there, they've got the dolls, they've got the dress-up costumes, and they've got the comic books, and then they've got other things, models and other kits that go along with all of this. And it's smart. It's basically saying, hey, did your kids go watch, Luca or Encanto? Or, I haven't seen anything for Turning Red there, but presumably at some point. You could just come in here and you can get everything. Get some shoes and a shirt and a dress and a comic book and a toy and a doll. And you can just go all in with one shop in one area. And it's clever. But the net result of that is Disney Press is done pretty well, particularly in terms of getting their books into places that you don't normally expect. You can get Disney Press books in through the direct market and through the comic shop, but you can also get it in lots of places, including even gas stations and bookstores and supermarkets and other things. So here's a question that comes in for a reader asking a little bit more about this, but I want to give you that background. It says, hey, Perch, I was wondering if I could get your thoughts on Marvel Press, the Disney book group imprint that publishes Marvel-themed books for children and young adults. You mentioned in your videos that you have kids, so I assume you're familiar with some of these, the 5-minute Spider-Man stories, World of Reading Avengers, etc. I find it odd that Disney treats Marvel Comics and Marvel Press as two entirely different product lines made by different people and sold to different customers, even through different distributors. You'd think that they would want an overall publishing strategy for Marvel so that the little kids who read Marvel Press books would go on into their teens to read comics. So my question is, why is it like this? Is it a problem for the comic book business, and if so, what do they do about it? Thanks, and drive safe, always. Driving safe right now. So I tend to do the video, and then I get myself to a point where I'm at a stoplight and I can read the mail. See, it's safe. I don't know. That's entirely a definition of safe, but we're going to run with it. Okay, so first off, how it works in the structure is you have Disney, the company, and then you have a bunch of divisions within Disney. You have the theme park business, you have park, what they call parks and resorts, and inside of that you have the theme parks and you have the hotels. And then you have, of course, the studio business, and you have the licensing division. And the licensing division has this massive footprint over technology licensing, digital, certainly, stuff on T-shirts and merchandise and everything else. And that's kind of how it's matrixed. And Disney licensing has tended to be fairly profitable, fairly, and fairly is probably an understatement. It's been quite profitable at times. And they basically make their bets because they have the power of Disney behind them that they can either license off their material to others, or they can get partners to come in and work on their behalf, and they take a lion's share of the money. because they're Disney. It's worth playing with them because you have a built-in audience. So Disney Press or Disney Publishing fits within that licensing org. Now, Disney Press is its own entity and they do their own thing, but they can also kind of manage other outside companies who are doing official movie tie-ins and books and other things that are publishing and print based. And Disney Press, a lot of the people there are fairly traditional in terms of the publishing business. They've worked in kind of other publishing houses, and they tend to be pretty savvy about what it takes to get books places. But the DNA, I would say, of the people who work there, and I mean, I have several close friends who work specifically in that division. They tend to be business minded in the sense of, as much as they are publishers, they also are always looking for how to create more margin, how to get their books more places, how to bump up rankings in places like Amazon, how to do promotions at Barnes and Noble and bookstores, how to get into big box chains like a Target or other places. They are very savvy about that. And if you move over to, and that encompasses Disney Press and also Marvel Press, and the 5-minute Spider-Man stories as an experiment for yourself. Go check out Marvel and Amazon and check out Marvel books, and then look at the top 100 selling books. What you'll discover is that it's most of the book. Well, not I'm sorry. Most of the top books, the books in the top 20, are actually coming from Disney Press, not Marvel Comics as we know it. The 5-minute Spider-Man stories are up there. The young adult kind of books are there. A viewer's guide to the MCU. That's what tends to dominate in that area for Marvel. And at any given day, a new graphic novel will come out and there will be some attention that swings over there. But consistently, Disney Press, Marvel Press is what sells highest through that zone. And it's true for other things as well. So it's something people don't often talk about because they talk about the comic book business and it's imploding and it's dying and all the rest. But Marvel does move a extremely healthy amount of books through this vehicle. It's technically not exactly Marvel. It's Disney doing it through Disney Press. So over on the Marvel comic side, you got a guy named David Gabriel, and you have a number of people that work under him that handle distribution and publishing for the comic book line. And I guess, screw it. I think the best way to say it is that that office, and particularly that leader, tends to be extremely myopic about everything that he does and tends to, run the same play. People who have worked for him and people who have worked for Disney Press often describe him as, bullheaded, won't listen to new ideas, won't go to new places, and pretty much just tries to keep the world exactly as it currently is, even though there are clear opportunities that it could do better. He is not well liked within parts of Disney licensing at fairly senior levels of management. This is a guy who tends to have a fairly negative reputation as being what was the quote I heard once? Somebody who could turn any situation into a bad situation. I think, and he is known for kind of giving statements that are just, it's like maybe a benign statement, but said in a way that's going to piss people off. He was at the heart of this retailers just don't like diversity comments from a couple years ago that, was not what he meant. And was not, the statement he was making was around kind of these new experiments of the characters that they were putting out. But he said it in such a way that just generated a lot of frustration. And there's certainly people within Marvel as well who think that this is not the sharpest tool in the toolbox and just kind of an annoying, person to work with. I think less generously, some of the people who've worked for him, and that office has had some turnover, describe him as a pretty was it shallow, egotistical prick, I think is the words that often come out. Anyway, that's more candid than I normally do with some of the people I know. Where does this all go? So I think for a long time, a long time, for the last several years, there's been a lot of speculation that Disney Press is going to just start to fold in more and more parts of the Marvel business. And there's at least, I think it's not a matter of if, and it's a matter of when. And it makes complete sense. Disney is doing a much better job at that division of not just getting the books and the comics and other places into better shape, but also maximizing the dollar they have. So they just do a better job of making more money out of what they produce because they're clever about how they put it out and where it goes. Marvel has operated as a kind of standalone entity at Disney for a long time, and there hasn't really been a giant push to change that. But it is inevitable that it will. I think there's very little business sense to keep it operating independently. I think the deal with Penguin Random House, even aspects of that deal, I know tie things together a little closer to Disney Press. There's no good sense to have these things operating on their own. And a lot of it is just being done because you have some legacy people. The company hasn't really wanted to tackle what you do with all these folks. David Gabriel does not have a role or a position over at Disney Press that I think anybody would think makes sense. So it's one of those areas where everybody will. It will be a huge moment when it happens, but it will be a very unsurprising moment when it happens. And I think it would be, definitely in Marvel's best interest, in everyone's best interest, to fold those two things together. Now, a lot of retailers would disagree entirely with what I just said because they have a relationship with this guy. They know the way the world works, and change equals bad in a lot of their minds. But financially, I think on the short term and the long term, strategically, it just makes all the sense in the world. I think it is likely that retailers would get a better deal if things were collapsed together. I also think that having comics in more places, and this is the hill I will die on, having comics in more places will help the revenue of the direct market. And if you ever want to see like two people intently, red in the face, having an extreme argument, you can come to Comics Pro when I show up, or some of these places where I'm talking to other retailers, and there is a hard division between retailers on this topic. Some people believe the more comics you have out in the world in as many places as possible, the more people will find them, the more people will be interested in them, and the more business will ultimately drive to comic shops. I would also throw in there that the more comics that are out on the world, the more collectible back issue stock eventually loads up. The retail chains, the box stores, are not going to have back issue sections in their shops. I was having a very intense argument with a retailer at one point who was pointing to half-price books and the fact that they have some back issue stock and saying this is the camel's nose in the tent. Soon Target and Walmart will have back issue stocks as well. Bullshit. They will not. That is completely not their business model. That is absurd. But regardless, that's one point of view. The other is that anything you can do to keep comics out of everywhere but the direct market is what you should be doing, because as soon as they go somewhere else, it will cause a price race to the bottom. And I just think that is just stupid thinking from stupid people who do not know how to run a business. But anyway, just saying. Well, anyway, so good question. A little bit of insight into that part of the business. Again, nobody really cares, I'm sure, because whenever I mention stuff like this, it's 5-minute Spider-Man stories are not comics, and you're right, they're not. But they're using a very popular comic book character. And to the point of your mail, if you're reading 5-minute Spider-Man stories to your kid when they're 4 and 5 and 6, then what's going to happen is they're going to grow up remembering Spider-Man. And so they're going to be more likely to pick up a Spider-Man comic. That's how this all works. So, I don't know. I think it's a very important part of the comic book ecosystem and how you get people into it. Anyway, there you go. Hope that helped, and thanks for listening.